Gallup did a study on wellness and the sorts of factors that make a person feel like they are doing okay in the world. And one of the things they found was that a person's boss, their manager, is one of the most influential people on a person's overall wellness. And so you as a manager, you have a great deal of impact on how a person is doing in their life. Now, I'm going to hold off on the actual Gallup study for a different video because there's a lot in there that's important to talk about. But today, I want to instead talk about the kinds of things that you as a manager can do to influence your employee, but here are the things that you want to avoid doing, because these are the things that are actually going to diminish their overall experience and make them feel less appreciated, less engaged, and generally dislike what they're doing. So these are the things you want to avoid, and I want to talk about them today. There are 7 of them. I can't hold up all my fingers, but 5 and 2, 7 things that I want to talk about today that you as a manager want to avoid. Item number 1 is only focusing on the employee's weaknesses. If you're only ever talking about the things that an employee is doing wrong, or the things that they're not good at, or all the stuff they have to fix, then the employee themselves is going to feel like they're broken, that they are a failure, and that they don't have anything worth contributing. You don't want them to feel that way. You want to feel like they can actually do the work and feel like they have something to look forward to. If they only get the feedback that they are messing up, then that's gonna suck. That's going to drag them down, and it's going to make them feel like they can't actually do it, which makes it more difficult for them to actually do their work and, for that matter, address the things that they need improvement on. To be clear, this is not to say that you shouldn't be addressing areas where an employee can improve upon or gaps in their abilities. Rather, you want to think about what are they doing good at? What are their strengths? Because everyone's different. You know, some people are better working with other people and other people are not. Some people are good in managing the numbers, other people are not. Figure out what they are good at and how can they leverage, how can they lean into that strength to address the gap in the performance, a gap in whatever metric you're trying to achieve. And you may be surprised at what you come up with, because the solution may not be simply get better at skill X. They may instead get better at skill Y and allows them to achieve the same objective, but in a different way. So look at what is the metric you're trying to achieve and engage them to figure out how best to do that. If that's improving their skill in a particular area, great. Build that into their performance goals. Otherwise, see if they have a creative solution in order to meet that. I think I've made a wrong turn somewhere. Item number 2 is ignoring their professional development. I get it. You've got work to do, you've got a work program to manage, and employees just have to get their work done. At the same time, if all you're talking about is the day-to-day work and the objectives in the short term, then they're not going to feel like their career has any future or direction. They may feel like, why am I continuing to do this day over day, year over year? Where am I going in my career and in my life? Now, maybe they're happy with that, and that's great. But you don't want to take that for granted. Otherwise, you may get in a position where they may feel like you don't really understand what they need or what they want, and that undermines the trust they have in you as their manager. And if it gets worse, they may begin to feel so disengaged that they feel like the only option for them, since they're not getting any development under your leadership, to transfer to a different department or quit the job altogether. Both of those options will actually be unfortunate for you and your team, but also it's just a product of them being disengaged from the work they're doing. This is where it's important to make sure that you're having regular one-on-one meetings with your employees. So these one-on-one meetings ideally should be held probably about twice a month. That gives you enough frequency to stay in touch with what's going on with them. But also it's important to make sure that you're having performance management meetings or performance development meetings. And these should be held probably about once a quarter. But the purpose of those meetings are to talk about the gaps in their knowledge and also to explore what their interests are, so you have an opportunity to develop them in those areas or give them opportunities so they can develop in those areas. This keeps them engaged and makes them feel like you're actually interested in them as people. The third thing you want to avoid is being unapproachable. I had one situation where I was working with somebody and she decided she didn't want to be bothered at all, and she would deliberately put books and binders on the chair in her office intended for people when they come in to feel like they couldn't sit down and talk to her, that they would be actively discouraged from ever speaking with her, so they would leave her alone. This is the behavior you want to avoid. You don't want to be unapproachable, because if you're unapproachable, you run the risk of people not coming to you when there's an issue, if there's a mistake, if there's a problem that needs to be addressed. They're like, I don't really want to bother my boss at this moment, at which point mistakes can be made, delays can happen, problems can arise that might take more effort and more time to solve if the employee had only had the trust to come to you in the first place. Instead, you want to make sure that you're giving employees an opportunity to talk to you, an opportunity to be available when they need you. So whether or not that's ensuring you have regular one-on-one meetings with them or other team meetings so they have a chance to have FaceTime and connect with you, but also simply the simple day-to-day stuff. Make sure that you're available for them to call you. Encourage them to call you if they have questions or if there are problems. And then if they do, make sure you pick up the phone or you answer the chat message or however they engage you. Make sure you stop what you're doing if you can and listen to what they're talking about. These are the sorts of behaviors that will help them feel like you care what they're going through and that you're working together to solve the issues of the day and work on the problems together. Item number 4 is being uninvolved in the work. This is different than being unapproachable in that you are actually so far removed from the work that your employees are doing and so unfamiliar with the tasks that need to be done that your employees don't feel like they can come to you if they even have a problem, because they know that you don't have any idea what's going on, you don't have any idea how any of the systems work or why they work or the importance of doing any of the things that they do, at which point you run into a similar position that you have if you're unapproachable, in that employees won't come to you if they have a problem. They won't come to you if something's broken or not working, because they know you can't fix it. And this just makes them feel alone, makes them feel like they don't have anyone they can go to for help, and this adds stress to their life and disengages them. Now, admittedly, there needs to be a balance struck here. You can't, as the manager, be familiar with everything and be involved in everything that your employees are doing. Otherwise, why do you have employees? So you need to balance how much you are familiar with the work that they are doing with also giving them the space to actually develop the work, solve the problems on their own. But you have to be familiar enough to have an opinion, to have a comment, to give them a direction, make a decision about how to solve the issue that they're facing. Be at least meaningfully involved in the work that they are doing so they can talk to you when they run into trouble. Item number 5 is the exact opposite. It's being too involved in your employees' work, often called micromanaging. If you're standing over their shoulder, clicking on their mouse for them and telling them what to do in every single moment, you are taking away agency from your employees. They will stop showing initiative, they'll stop showing creativity, because what's the point? You're just going to tell them what to do and point them in the direction they need to go in. Why even bother doing anything? You are actively just demotivating them and preventing them from being able to solve problems on their own if you're micromanaging them. Let's take a moment to talk about micromanaging itself. Micromanaging really comes from a place of fear. You're afraid yourself that the work is not going to get done and how that's going to impact you. And the reason why you're afraid that it is not going to get done is because on some level, you don't think your employees can do the work. Either they don't have the skill, they don't have the knowledge, they can't meet the timelines. It's not about whether or not they can do the work or have the skills or have the knowledge. It's your feelings about the matter, and you're afraid that the work is not going to get done and it's going to reflect negatively on you. And so you exert your will because you know you can get the work done. And so you're pushing your employees because you don't trust them. What this is really about is not about the work. It's about your lack of understanding of where your employees are at and what their capabilities are. It's a gap in that understanding and a gap in your trust of them to complete the work. What you need to do in these situations is take the time to talk to your employees and figure out what is the problem that needs to be solved in the work and what can be done to address it. Figure out if they actually lack the skill, and they will tell you, or you can work with them to figure out if they actually have the skill, and what is required to meet the deadline. Then you have to let go and let them do that work. Now, obviously, if there's a gap and they need extra support, you can come in and provide that extra support, but give them an opportunity to do the work itself. Item number 6 is being pessimistic. Now, like I said right at the top of the video, you as their boss are one of the most important people in their life, and you are able to influence their overall sense of wellness and sense of safety. And when you show up with negative attitudes, being grumpy or angry, they're extremely sensitive to that experience. And this can mess up their day, their week, and their month. So you need to be mindful of how you're showing up. Creating an environment where your employees feel like you're negative all the time, first off, obviously that's going to upset them. But they're also not likely to come to you if they have issues, because why be around somebody who is mopey, angry, or negative all the time? It's not likely you're going to give them a sense of hope or optimism about the challenges they're facing, and so you're undermining their trust as well as making them have a bad day. This doesn't mean that you can't be frustrated or upset with some of the things that are in your scope of the work. Not at all. Obviously, you're going to feel that, but how much you share that with your employees can really affect them, knowing that if you're ranting and raving, that's going to disengage them. Obviously, you can express frustration, but keep it at a level that's professional. Keep that at a level that is not going to bring them down. Help illustrate sort of the challenges maybe that you're facing, but understand that there's a line between who you can, share your gripes with, which is going to be your boss, not your employees, and your employees who need you to lead, who need you to show up and provide them with a sense of optimism and hope that they can actually get past their own stresses and their own insecurities and their own fears about the work. Item number 7 is using passive-aggressive language. This is where you're making a comment about an employee's action or behavior, but you're not doing it directly. It's hidden behind a joke, it's hidden behind a snide remark or something sarcastic, and you're not actually saying what needs to be said. You're implying that there's something wrong, and you're hoping that people will get the message without you actually saying the words that need to be said. This is extremely damaging and undermines the trust absolutely in both your ability to effectively share job-related information, job-related feedback, performance management feedback, and also whether or not an employee can actually trust you with information if you're going to not hold that information with respect and do something practical about it. Using passive-aggressive language comes from a place of lack of experience or training on how to have difficult conversations. Basically, the person, the manager in this case, is unwilling to have that frank, open conversation about what behavior is not up to the standard, what gap in performance is being witnessed, and actually expressing that to the employee because they're afraid of having that possible negative reaction or negative feedback from their employee. If this is you, the thing you want to start looking at is how do you get comfortable with having those difficult conversations? First thing you want to do is understand what is the work that needs to be done. What are the skills that need to be used in order to get that work done? What are the other standards that need to be met? Get clear on the actual metrics of the performance, and then start setting the expectations. Make sure that your employees are clear on what work needs to be done, when it needs to be done, and that both you and the employee are aligned on that objective, and that you can measure them towards meeting that objective. Did they hit the deadline? Yes or no? Were they hit the level of quality? Yes or no? When you have a clear set of expectations that are understood by both the manager and the employee, that goes a long way in helping make those difficult conversations easier, because you can point to a metric and say, hey, we agreed that we would get this done by such and such a date. And, if it was met, great. If it wasn't met, well, then you can talk about that. But hiding behind an expression where you're not actually saying what it is you're displeased about, but you're making it clear that you're displeased, is not actually going to improve the performance, and it's not going to make them feel like they can trust you. All right, let's summarize. These are the 7 things you want to avoid doing unless you are trying deliberately to upset or disengage your employees. 1, always focus on the weaknesses. 2, forget to look at their professional development. 3, being unavailable. 4, being disengaged. 5, being too engaged or micromanaging. 6, being pessimistic. And 7, using passive-aggressive language. So what do you think? Are these useful tips? And is there anything else you would add to this list? If so, let me know in the comments below. And for those of you who have found this video through YouTube, be sure to click like and subscribe. And for those of you who are on LinkedIn, follow my profile for more. I post updates regularly. And if you're interested in more practical leadership tips, then why not check out the link below, in which you can download a free communication guide specifically focusing on how to ask great questions. Because questions are the starting point for understanding a lot of issues. I'm Matthew Devine. I'm an executive and leadership coach based here in Toronto, Canada. And I support new engineering managers with practical leadership tips and support to help them have efficient, effective, and inspiring teams. So, stay tuned for more. Until then, let's get to work.